Thank you for that introduction, kind introduction, and thank you for inviting me. So today, what I would like to talk about is sustainable growth and inclusion. That's it is a broad topic, but I think we can look at it more in the context of it. But I also think it's very relevant for us to have that in mind in terms of what we all do in different ways. More so now, it's always been important, but then there is an appetite now to work together on these issues, and hence I thought it would be appropriate for us to spend some time to think about this issue. So, next slide, please. So what I'm highlighting here are three broad headings, and all of these are a key aspect of what's required, and I'm classifying them into the economic and financial issues, and this is where we have to look globally as individual countries as well as unitedly about how can we bring about inclusion, how can we bring about equality in our society. And then, of course, right now there is strong awareness in the last 10 years particularly about the fact that we have to ensure the environmental sustainability. It is important for us to work together in achieving the goals of environment sustainability. And the third thing, which I'm going to spend lesser time on, is regarding security issues, because these are also increasingly becoming more important for us, both as individual nations and as an international community. I will spend very little time on it, but I'm classifying the three major challenges of our times into these three categories. Next slide, please. So there's too much information there. Don't worry. So I'm going to focus. I will give a few cases of the economic issues, and I'll give you a case study of some research that I've been doing in India regarding environmental issues, and then maybe briefly talk about the security issue, and then focus on what the Commonwealth of Nations can do to achieve some of these goals. So when we talk about poverty, there are various definitions of poverty, and for decades I think the issue has floated like $1 a day or $2 a day or $1.25 a day. These are come to in certain issues. But if someone says, somebody is getting less than $2 a day, I think what's important for us is to understand the context of the situation and the country with regard to which we are talking about this. So, and then lots of times people have debates and arguments about what is the level that we define as below poverty line. Those are important, but they are less important than trying to ensure that we overcome poverty in an absolute sense. So for me, that's why I put this some different definitions. I found this Scottish Poverty Information Unit's definition particularly relevant. What does it say? It says poverty is defined relative to the standards of living in a society, and that is key because we cannot give a single measure for the whole world. So it has to be something which is relative to the standards of living in a particular society at a specific time. People live in poverty when they are denied an income sufficient for their material needs, and when these circumstances exclude them from taking part in activities which are an accepted part of daily life in that society. So I think that actually summarizes more clearly as to what is it that we should try to achieve for any society around the world. So, and I've used this thing that's kind of the Indian language, where it says that everyone should have access to one full meal a day. In India, there was a phrase at one time during Indira Gandhi's time where she said, roti, kapda or makan, and it became so popular that there were even films made with that title. Roti is bread, kapda is clothes, and makan is a shelter. So while the Scottish definition is a good definition that we need to work toward, so in simpler terms, to say that I will put it as everybody, everywhere, should have access to one full meal a day, something decent to wear, and a safe place to sleep in. Now, there is enough in the world to achieve this goal, but I think the problems and the challenges we have, that we have people, homeless people in the streets of London, and we have all kinds of poverty issues around the world, is not that the world does not have enough resources. The problem is in the fact that the distribution of resources is not undertaken properly. So, next slide, please. So then, briefly thinking about inequality, just for fun, because I come from a mathematics background, I've just put in some symbols about what is equality in mathematical terms. Very simple thing. But we just take that into understanding what it is in real life terms. So we've got some definitions there. So economic inequality refers to how economic metrics are distributed among individuals in a group, among groups in a population, or among countries. And social inequality is characterized by the existence of unequal opportunities and rewards for different social positions or statuses within a group or society. It contains structured and recurrent patterns of unequal distribution of goods, wealth, opportunities, rewards, and punishments. There are two main ways to measure social inequality: inequality of conditions and inequality of opportunities. And one of my latest, my current, I'm currently really strongly trying to engage in that one thing, that how can we achieve a situation, a world where every single person everywhere should have equal opportunity to achieve their full potential. Now, all these words are important. Every single person should be able to achieve and their full potential. Does this exist in the developed world? I don't think so. So, doesn't exist in the developing world. It doesn't exist in the third world countries too. So, can we achieve this? Is the big challenge, and that's what I think we all should be thinking about and trying to strive. There is protectionism, there is individuals trying to protect their territory, and it exists everywhere. Every one of you can reflect on your own situations, your positions, your jobs, your wherever you are. That doesn't exist. And for me, I think that is a major challenge, and how can we overcome this challenge? So next slide, please. Lots of numbers, but I think it's quite interesting to look at some of these indicators. So we're taking some indicators such as, and I've only taken countries in the Commonwealth for our reflection today. So if you look at human development, so I've got Human Development Index, and I've got GDP and some of these other indicators. I'm going to talk about this slide, but I've actually retained one from previous years, just as a quick comparison. But what has happened is, I'll give you the interpretation here, and you can have a quick look at the next one. This is from the Human Development Report. The lots of tables. I've compiled it by combining different tables from you can get it on the website if you look for Human Development Report. They do them every 2 years, so you would get one from the 14. The 15 one is not, it probably come out in November, but the 14 one works. So, and I've deliberately included the developed countries and then middle income countries. So developed countries, there isn't, I won't say much about, but if you look at the ones I've highlighted in red are ones where the HDI, the Human Development Index, has increased by about 0.04 times. So big advancements in Sri Lanka, and that's quite interesting. And I think we can think back on what Sri Lanka has had in the last 2 or 3 years, so which indicates that there has been an influence of the fact that it's come out of its excessive war situation, so it's being reflected in some improvements, and you can see, interestingly, Sri Lanka has higher indices compared to India or the other countries in the South Asia. So if South Africa could do better, but there is still an improvement since the last since 2 years ago. What's interesting is that Pakistan also has seen improvements in its development index. Now, the reason for the average annual HDI growth being higher at the bottom end of the table is because these countries require higher rate of growth in terms of their human development indices. So it is not, doesn't mean that they're doing better, but it is just that these countries, because the base at which they are, or the level at which they are, they require a much higher rate of growth in order to really achieve development. The other thing I'd like to...
Sorry, which is the column with rate of growth?
Rate of growth, I'm talking about the average annual HDI growth, second column. So the other thing is we have a quick look at the GDP. And if we look at the GDP, just because India has 6,245 doesn't mean that India is the richest in terms of GDP. You have to look at it in the context of the population. If you look at, there's a column, fourth last from the other end. If you look at the population, you can see 1252, which is 1.3 billion people. So that's where the spread of what the country has becomes smaller per individual, and hence that's not that it's very high, but it is just that it requires to grow more. And if you look at the last column, which is the labor force participation, which is also an interesting thing for us to look at. So India has female participation in the labor force is 28.8, so about 29 people aged. And then you have 80%, 20%, about 30% women and about 81% men in India. Now, if you look at the top end of the table, so if you look at Australia, the labor force participation of women is about 59%, and men is 72%. It's not as if it's 100% everywhere. And you have to. This is people aged 15 and over and older. So I don't think there's an upper cutoff, which is probably a problem. So and if you see UK, labor force participation is 56% women and 69% men, which also doesn't show very high levels. Some of the reasons. One reason, there could be various reasons. One reason could be also the trends in the Western or the European model of older people. It depends on the ratio of working age population to non-working population. But it is a situation which is not ideal, and I think we have to think about ways to address this. Next slide, please. So this one, again, just to show you, in case you remember, don't worry if you can't, in case you remember, it's just that these numbers are slightly lower. So there have been improvements where it is required, which is a good thing. Next slide, please. I know I have 15 minutes, so I'll try to be quick. So this is a graph. So talking about inequality, I wanted to show you clearly, show evidence of the fact that inequality in Britain is constantly increasing, and the top 1% of the populations is, and the difference between the top 1% and the top 9 and the bottom and the rest of the 90% is growing, both in the US and UK and parts of the developed world. Is the solution to reduce the top end? No, the solution is to lift the rest of the people to also be able to have the potential to be able to achieve greater economic and social independence and status, achieve greater equality by moving the lower end higher rather than trying to say, no, we have to punish those who are working and entrepreneurial and innovative, but we have to ensure that everybody else can contribute in the same way. Next slide, please. So now I'm going to move into the environmental issues. So this is a paper I've done with a colleague for the ADB. So we're kind of trying to say how some of these aspects are crucial in order for us to pursue green growth, so you see it has multiple aspects. So labor markets, you can use labor markets to the best possibility. There's energy security, and it enables innovation, and also it is helpful for social inclusion and equity. I'm going to take a case study from a state called Karnataka in Andhra Pradesh to give you a little bit of an example of how the social inclusion and equity is working through renewable technologies in India. Next slide, please. So this is, I've just put some pictures in because they can speak to us very clearly. So this is in the city of Bangalore, which is the capital of the state of Karnataka. When we're talking about a state like Karnataka, the population is 64 million, which is, about the same as British population. So I'm just trying to give you the context that a state means, it doesn't mean it's a small place, but it's as big in terms of people. And this is, you can see the difference. The picture on the bottom shows the high-rise buildings, and the one in the foreground is the slum. Now, these people could be construction workers who have migrated from rural areas to get jobs and to be able to provide the work required to build those high-rise buildings there. And that is all this movement of people. And then not only do everybody else finds jobs as well, because then when the building opens for occupation, then they find additional jobs to work in the houses there, either gardening or all kinds of roles for both men and women are possible. But I'm not going to talk about that, but what I want to show you is how renewable technologies, and here I'm taking off-grid solar, so this is small-scale solar models. So it's so innovative that the one in the first picture is a small, a little room, that's somebody's house. And even there, you put solar panels, and actually a social enterprise organization is called CELCO, is the one which is organizing this with the lower socioeconomic group in this place. So all they do is facilitate through developing loans and things like that to build these solar panels, and that provides energy source for that family. Just in front of them are flats which have public electricity source, energy source, but for them this works better. And the other one is also a slum, and the other picture is one of the slum area in again, mainly construction workers in the city of Bangalore. What happens is, if you can look, I don't know if it's very clear, so that room, when people are going to work in the morning for their way journey, they leave their batteries over there. So the light green things on the shelves are the batteries from their solar light, which they deposit at this place, which also doubles up as a school for the children there. They go to work, they come back in the evening, pick up their batteries, and then they have one solar light to cook their meal and for their children to study. And that helps in so many ways, not only in terms of enabling them it also has implications on health, because otherwise you're in front of a cooking system where it has health complications and pollution, whereas this helps them in so many ways. That's the same. And one more picture to show how, by having this one solar lamp or two solar lamps, women are able to flex their working time to be able to provide the work that they need to do and the support they need to do for the family, plus work at night to catch up on their work and provide additional income to improve the conditions of their family. Next one, please. Next slide, please. So this is, that's the company, CELCO, it's a foundation, and so this is broadly saying what the economic, social, and environmental benefits are. economically, on a broader scale, on a bigger scale, what it does is these kind of programs enable more job opportunities, creates more jobs and things like that. And hence, working on an environment sustainable green growth model actually has great economic benefits for both individual states, countries, and at a global level. Next one, please. So on the security issue, I'm just putting one slide up to just kind of show us that these issues should not happen. One of the things that concerns me, has always concerned me, but which is also more stark to me now, is that we have different we have different security issues. Some of them pertain to safety, wars, conflicts. Those are they're very major and important security issues. But for me, I think one of the bigger challenges is, say, child abuse. Now, it is hidden and it is pervasive all around the world. And I cannot imagine how we can have a world where children can be abused. And for me, I think that's a very serious issue, which needs much more to be done to overcome these kind of problems. So now we'll focus on, how much time do I have?
Another 5 minutes.
Okay, so concentrating on what the Commonwealth of Nations can do, which I think many of us know. So this is a quick summary of what the Commonwealth is. I think it's an amazing organization with 53 countries and represented by 6 regions of the world. It covers about 2.2 billion people, which is about 30% of the world population. And 60% of this population is under the age of 30. So it's one of the most diverse institutions, and it has excellent, great values. Best democracies are achieved through partnerships, but what are its values? Democracy, freedom, peace, human rights, rule of law, and opportunity for all. So these are all already embedded in what the Commonwealth is trying to do. And what it does is brings people together, and it's acting as a catalyst for consensus building, enable representation of views of members, and it covers a whole range of issues on education, environment, civil society, finance, foreign affairs, gender affairs, health, law, tourism, youth development, to give governments a better understanding of each other's goals. Next slide. So, continuing in the same theme, those were the broader objectives and outlines. And here it is some specific activities that the Commonwealth is involved in. It is a source of assistance for sustainable development and poverty eradication, and it's committed to the achievement of the Millennium Development Goals, plus also now that we are moving toward the next phase, the Sustainable Development Goals, and the Commonwealth is closely involved. The organizations are involved in diverse activities, from helping countries with trade negotiations, women's leadership building, small business sector, supporting youth participation at all levels, providing experts to write laws. This is done through policy development, the regular meetings and interactions that happen, and an additional thing that has happened in recent years is the technical assistance. So UK is strongly moving in the direction of technical assistance in its development aid, and that's where I think the Commonwealth is also reflecting this kind of move toward the contribution. I think that is a very good way to be able to contribute. And there is a Commonwealth Fund for technical cooperation, and it also provides advisory services. It also, and I think this is an important role of the Commonwealth, that it provides an influential voice for small and vulnerable economies, and of global advocacy on issues of growth, resilience, and climate finance. We have the former president of Seychelles here, and I'm sure he can give us something more to say about contribution of the Commonwealth for small islands. Another important thing, and I think Commonwealth is quite unique, we'll come to the next slide, that so what it is, if you look at it, it is the largest partnership of nation. It has had representative leadership for forever almost. So it's not that it is restricted, that the top leadership can only be people from certain countries or certain regions. If you go and look at the information, there has been a representative head. The leaders have been from so many different parts of the regions and countries within the Commonwealth, which I think is a fantastic example where other institutions are trying to grapple with how can they move in that direction. And you must have heard about the BRICS Bank, which was launched just this week, where this is one of the big things, I think, of our time, where that will have a status where the BRICS countries will have their own their leadership exhibited in this. I've contributed and I've been involved in a small way by supporting Professor Nicholas Stern, who's been the key driver along with Joe Stiglitz in these discussions and negotiations. And it's excellent that has been eventually it has been formed. It has been 5 years of hard work, negotiations, and diplomacies to reach that. So again, it's most diverse. So imagine the richness of experience and expertise that comes in the Commonwealth from having worked with so many diverse groups of people. And that's where the understanding of South-South, understanding how to work through a world we live in, a new world order, where we cannot say this is a supremacy, but we are increasingly globally connected, and we have to learn to work together to achieve the main goals that are important to make life and the world a better place. So Commonwealth, and this is where the last points I'm saying is that it can play a highly significant role. It is doing quite a lot already, but I think it can enhance it more and can do more. And it can play a highly significant role through the profile that it has. It can effectively co-opt its soft power. This is where we're talking about cultural diplomacy, and I put cultural diplomacy into the soft power to strike an effective balance and links bridge to enhance sustainable growth, inclusion, and unity. It can enhance its potential as a leader for the promotion of these goals. One of the ways I think every organization, every institution has limitations of resources, and I think so does the Commonwealth, because its finances are dependent on voluntary contributions by member states, which means it doesn't have as big a pot of funds like many other organizations have. But ways to overcome these is to work in partnership with several other organizations which have been forming in recent years, and I think that part of it has to grow more. And the second important point is that, and one other way is to bring in public-private partnerships to complement and supplement the resources required in order to achieve its full potential. Thank you.